hope your Valentine's Day weekend is off to a good start. I'm starting the program today with John Ellis, founder and editor-in-chief of News Items, your morning newsletter on everything that's important in the world. Get rid of everything else. You can stick with News Items and be well read. John, I had no idea until you sent me the note that we got a little crisis brewing in the South China Sea. I did know that Prime Minister Takaichi had won a thumping big victory last Sunday. Did not know that Japan had seized a Chinese fishing vessel within their exclusive economic zone, and China is not happy. How goes that situation?
Well, it's interesting. I think it's the most important story of the day, and it may, become more important as the days pass. But if you go back to November, Takaishi was newly installed as the prime minister. She was asked what would happen if China invaded Taiwan, and she said Japan could become involved if that were to occur. The Chinese completely flipped out about that. They said, "Mind your own business. You have no right to even think that." And they put down, some marker, no tourists from China could go to Japan, whatever. She then last weekend was elected. Her party got a two-thirds majority in the Diet, which is the Japanese Congress, and she won a landslide victory. And here we are 5 days later, and a Chinese fishing boat is in Japanese waters. The Japanese seize the fishing boat and they arrest the captain. And so that's where we're at right now. But the one thing that President Xi has simply can't allow is for him to appear weak. And at the moment, he appears weak because the Chinese haven't done anything yet. So we'll see what
I would also
to her
add, well, we
into her newly elected status. It's a fairly bold move, and one I think that will. I'm surprised it wasn't on the front page of every major news website.
now you brought to my attention, and I immediately went to see what have we got there. The Lincoln was on patrol in the South China Sea. The George Washington is back in Yokosuka, the home port. We do have a big deck Tripoli U.S. Marine Corps carrying ship out there, and it's a big deck. But we really don't need another crisis in the world right now with two carriers on their way to off the coast of Iran. So good heads up on that. Let's go to the good news in your briefing that you sent me. Alzheimer's. I'm covered on coffee. I'm not sure I'm covered on language unless high school Latin counts. Let people know about how to ward off Alzheimer's and dementia.
So there are two stories today. One is that caffeine reduces your risk of Alzheimer's, and it's a huge study conducted over 43 years. 2 or 3 cups of coffee a day, 2 or 3 cups of tea a day reduces your risk of inflation of reduces your it reduces your risk of
I hope it
dementia.
reduces inflation. That might be why the number came in today.
Sorry about that. Reduces your risk of dementia. And, as I said, it's a huge study. So that was encouraging news, particularly for me, because I get up very early in the morning and drink a fair amount of coffee. The second is that if you keep engaged intellectually, if you read, if you write, if you do puzzles, if you stay active, if you learn a language, it reduces your risk of dementia by 40%. So the advice is to start reading, start writing, start doing puzzles, and
Well, I
you'll
work with
be
Dwayne every
less
day, so
likely.
I'm covered on the puzzles too. But yeah, one thing they never tell you in these studies on caffeine is I don't know anyone who drinks 3 cups of coffee who doesn't drink 5 cups of coffee. So I'm the 5 cup of coffee a guy day. Does it decline? Did you get to the small print?
I didn't get to the small print. I was so excited about the first paragraph that I didn't read
All right.
anymore.
Now you have to explain to me the AI story you sent me because the numbers are mind-boggling on the speed with which AI can compute or likely to compute in the next 20 years.
Yeah, there's a research group called METR, and they built a simple model for forecasting when AI will automate AI development. Okay, so essentially
Jeez.
the AI will write the code. And at current rate, I'm going to quote from the research article. At current rates of compute growth and algorithmic progress, this model's median prediction is 99% automation of AI R&D in late 2032. So 6 years from today, all AI code will be written by AI, and that has
That is
enormously
Rise of the
positive.
Machines. That is Rise
has
of the
eno-
Machine stuff.
it has enormously positive implications because if genetics is code as well, there are 4 letters and 3 billion base pairs. So if your AI is able to write that code, then we'll have a much better understanding of every disease. It will be astonishing. On the other hand, there are no guardrails to code writing code. There's no structure, there's no salt talk, if you will, that nations all agree on how it should develop. So it could be that the machines win.
In the absence of an agreement, everyone goes as fast as you can, which may lead to why people are so gloomy. The poll that you brought from Pew about the percentage of U.S. adults who anticipate living high quality lives in 5 years, down to under 60%. I find that astonishing, John Ellis.
Yeah, it was actually a Gallup poll, but they've been tracking this forever, and it is truly discouraging because people in the U.S. are uh, discouraged, and the younger they are, the more discouraged they are. So it's something that needs to be turned around, or else we're in a lot more trouble than we think we are.
Is exuberance always been lower among the younger than it has been among the middle aged because their uncertainty, or is it something that is precipitously declining with Gen Alpha?
It's not it's declining. Uh, it's not that it's precipitously declining. It's that the steady decline has fallen off a couple of stairs instead of one
Ah,
stair at a time.
all right. I
So
got my polls
it's discouraging.
confused. The Pew poll does not surprise me. That's the low confidence in journalism to act in the best interest of public. 57% express low confidence in journalism when it comes to acting in the public interest. I kind of actually surprised it's that high, uh, John.
Well, I think, this is not news, right? I mean, we've been watching this trend for a long time. And the it's I think the reason that it's not higher is that because people have found their own news sources, which they quite like, right? I mean, people who listen to Hugh
Yep.
Hewitt like the Hugh Hewitt show. So from their point of view, the news media isn't a bad thing. But I think big news media organizations, the major broadcast networks, the major cable organizations, the major what we used to call newspapers, are suffering a crisis of confidence. But that's not news. That's been
You know,
ongoing, as they say.
you've got tens of thousands of subscribers to news items. I am among them. Do you ever get feedback from them why they have confidence in news items? Because I think it's because you cover the waterfront quickly, but I'm not sure.
I think the key to our success, such as it is that in 8 minutes you get a lot of information that is, vetted, and that brings to your attention stuff that you might not otherwise see. I mean, the basic premise is we read it all so you don't have to, and then we make the decisions as to what is most important. And people like that because they can get a pretty broad picture in 8 minutes, and then they can get on with their day.
All right, last story you sent me. Switzerland is joining the anti-immigrant, maybe joining the anti-immigrant wave. They're going to hold a referendum. I'm not sure when it's going to be on whether or not to admit more people. Details?
Yeah. Details are that the current population is 9 million. They're there's a strong conservative movement in Switzerland that has gathered the signatures to put a petition, put a referendum essentially on the ballot to say, look, we're going to cap the population of Switzerland at 10 million so that we're not overrun by immigration. And it's an important vote. Switzerland is not part of the EU, but it is indicative, I think, of a very strong reaction to immigration across Europe. And as the climate gets worse, in the upper part of Africa and stuff, and as the political climate deteriorates in the Middle East, more and more people are going to want to move to Europe. And so Switzerland has said, nope, we're going to go 10 million's the number, and that's it.
And Italy deployed its navy today, saying stop,
Yeah.
interdict all shipping from Africa. So it is not just the Swiss, it's everywhere. John Ellis from News Items, thank you. If you want news items, just go to Google, News Items, John Ellis, Substack, and you'll find it. Thank you, John. Joined now by Eli Lake of the Free Press, where he was writing about the Kurds inside of Iran today. Eli, good to see you. Follow Eli at X and on X at Eli Lake. Yesterday, the president said if negotiations don't work, there will be severe trauma for Iran and that they have about a month or so to make them work. I note before we start that Gaddafi, in fact, capitulated in late 2003, early 2004, opened up his kimono, take my nuclear stuff, take my chemical, take my scuds. That's really the only choice that I think the Iranians have, other than getting hammered again. What do you think?
Well, I agree with you. I think it's slightly different than what happened with Gaddafi. Gaddafi was responding to the invasion of Iraq and the coalition that George W. Bush had put together. And this was pursued discreetly. There was no announcement of it until there was a deal. It was done first through intelligence, and it was done very quietly. This time it's a little different. We know that we had Midnight Hammer last June, and the Iranian people, we began the year with that front and center. I think we're in the beginning stages. My hope is that we are in the beginning stages of a revolution that will finally topple the Islamic Republic. In this respect, Trump is basically offering a kind of lifeline, albeit a Godfather offer sort of lifeline. If you disarm and you do all these things which are definitely in the U.S. national interest, we will let you survive. But the problem is he began 2026 by promising to come to the aid of the Iranian people who've already died in the tens of thousands at the hands of this vicious regime. So I have mixed feelings about where we are at this moment.
I have a very clear feeling, Eli, which is if the president follows through, he will have done what he promised to do, meaning if he attacks Iran or if they totally capitulate and Khamenei is gone and his son is gone and there's a general in charge, it's possible. It is not likely. I think it is very likely that he's going to hammer Iran, but that, as Admiral Montgomery explained on this program on Monday, he's going to do it after making sure we're as defended as we can be wherever we are vulnerable. And I don't know if it'll be Serbia-like or Libya-like in terms of our pounding of him, but it's going to be big. And I think it's going to be within a month to 2 months.
Well, this is, again, what I want to say, though, is that what concerns me is that it seems that he has dropped the condition that you can't kill Iranians who are protesting the regime. That's the problem. They did kill in the tens of thousands, they defied his red line. And if there is a final deal, I have not heard any, it could be that that's in the deal, but we haven't heard, when Trump talks about the deal, he talks about nuclear, he talks about missiles, he meets with Netanyahu, but we don't hear, and he talks about the terror proxies. But what about the executions? What about, the Iranian people? And ultimately, I think the end goal has to be the end of the regime. If they sign a piece of paper.
I'm not going to... I agree, but Eli, yeah. I've heard a lot of people talking about this. We won't know how well Trump has pulled this off until it's over. It's like Sophocles. You will not know how good the day has been until the sun is set. And we won't... The sun doesn't set on this drama for a while. So I don't think he can bring those people back to life. I don't blame them that the regime killed them. They've been killing people for 47 years. but I do think we got to give him a chance to do what he said he would do. And by upping the ante with terror, with the missiles on the table, they're not going to give up their missiles, are they?
Well, I agree. That now you're getting into something else, which is that can they accept the offer? Are they motivated by a kind of regime death wish? I believe they are. I think they're apocalyptic. And then the second thing is that it's absolutely prudent to want to make sure that you have the interceptors in place and the military positioning in place to absorb any kind of barrages that the Iranians will launch after an attack. All of that's true, and I hope that there's a lot of coordination. I assume there is between the Mossad and our military and the CIA to find out exactly where the missile launchers are and to make sure maybe we get them before they can fire them off. All that's great. But I just want to stress, it's not a judgment because I think you're right. We have to judge this we can't judge until it's over. I'm throwing one red flag, though, is that the regime was cratering. They had lost popular legitimacy. Even the Chancellor of Germany said they're in their final months or days. At this point, even the act of negotiations is reflected back to the Iranian people. See, America will abandon you. And that's the part of it that doesn't sit well with me. I understand that he's trying to do it without war. That's always admirable. But then why make a promise that you didn't deliver on when they did that? Now, again, it could be one of these things where he said that was where his heart was, and then he's briefed, listen, we don't have the interceptors in place. We've got to move these assets into the Persian Gulf. That's going to take some time. I understand that. And in the end, history will judge him by the final result, not by what maybe happens in the interim. But just right now, where is that original demand? Stop killing your own people, mullahs. We hold all the cards. They have zero leverage. We can destroy them all kinds of ways.
He can't deliver that now. I mean, I think he was actually trying to protect those people. I think he was trying to tell the regime not to do that. And the regime did it, and they did something I didn't think possible. They out-Chinesed the Tiananmen Square thing. They went 3 times Tiananmen Square. And I didn't think we'd ever see that done in the daylight or at nighttime or without the internet. So they have done the worst that they could possibly do, and now it's made it harder because the IRGC can't really lay down its arms, can they? Or the people will... I asked the Crown Prince this on Monday. How do you stop the reprisals if the regime falls? And he says he thinks they can. I don't think he can. Do you?
I hope he can. I think reprisals in the situation, and it's been building, I'd say, since '79, are inevitable. I mean, there were reprisals, as we know, in Romania. It's very rare that you don't get reprisals when you have a regime this violent and repressive finally topple. But they do have to go, and I'm just worried that even if we got a great deal on all the things we wanted, the survival of the regime is still, in my view, a failure.
Well, I agree, but I don't think that's possible, Eli. Because if that is, then Trump has failed in a way. It would be a historic failure. It would haunt his presidency if he collapses now.
Yes. And I think the difference between Trump and Obama, there's been a lot of these comparisons, is that Trump understands that you can never go into a negotiation wanting the deal more than the other side. So he's shown before he is willing to walk away and say, I'm not going to play games anymore. That was Obama's big weakness. At the end of it, he just wanted any deal, and he got a very bad one. So I don't think Trump will agree to a bad deal. In terms of our U.S. interest, I just want him to understand that even if what he thinks is a good deal or his advisors say is a good deal, it can't be a good deal until we see a new regime in Iran.
And I agree. And if you ever played Jack's Open Trips to Win poker, the Iranians don't even have Jack's to open. They can't open.
Yep.
I mean, they can't.
Yeah.
And so I hope
100%.
We're there next week. We'll keep talking about it every week because Eli and I have got there's no other story that's important in the world. Maybe the Chinese fishing boat the Japanese seized this morning, but no other story is this close. Thank you, Eli Lake. Follow him at Eli Lake and read him in the Free Press. Joined now by Wall Street Journal columnist Matt Continetti. Matt also heads domestic policy studies at the American Enterprise Institute, and in his column this week for the Journal, he was talking domestic policy. He said the Republicans need 3 things before November: sustained economic growth. I think I'm going to give a check to that, given the inflation number and job number this week. They need to have put the Democrats on their feet with a pivotal moment towards the end. Don't know if that's going to happen, and they need presidential barnstorming, which I think is going to happen. Matt Continetti, do you agree with me first on the fact that sustained economic growth appears to be in the offing for as long as we can see?
Absolutely, Hugh. I mean, this administration has a great story to tell on the economy. Very simply, jobs are above expectations and inflation is below expectations. And slowly but surely, the American economy and the American worker is gaining back the ground that we lost during the Biden era. I think Biden dug about a $3,000 hole in living standards. And with the latest data, I think the administration is saying we're up to about $1,500 back into the filling it back up. So that means we're halfway there to where we're starting to really feel that we're making progress again on the economy. And so it's very important for the administration to highlight all of this good economic news. I think President Trump has been trying to do that in recent weeks, trying to get the story back onto the economy. You notice that he's not holding as many press conferences with foreign leaders, for example, and the travel he's done in recent weeks has emphasized affordability. He needs to keep that up through the election.
He has also made the Secretary of the Treasury a regular fixture on the evening and news and the Sunday shows, and I think Scott Bessent deserves headline billing because he's very good at this. Better than, William E. Simon was pretty good. James Baker was very calm and poised. I'm sure Hamilton was witty, but he is, our new Secretary of the Treasury is a very funny man, and he's got good news to tell. I think they can't keep them out there enough.
Yeah, Secretary Bessent's a great ambassador for the administration, and he made the rounds today with the latest inflation numbers. You know, this has been the story of the Trump presidency so far, is that the tariffs aren't showing up in the overall inflation data. And so the economic cost of the tariffs, and tariffs are a tax, so there's always a cost, is showing itself in other ways. And so Secretary Bessent can say, look, inflation is lower than expected. And meanwhile, GDP growth is above expectations, quite considerable growth coming out of the last quarter. And the job situation, the job picture in January was really out of left field in terms of the jobs created. And so that's a great story any administration wants to have. Now, it's not enough, I think, for the midterms, because if you recall, the economy was going gangbusters in 2018 as well. And in fact, at that time, the economy was President Trump's best issue, right? He had high ratings on the economy, which he does not enjoy today. But in 2018, you had a growing economy. You had Trump being rated very highly on the economy. The Democrats still won the House of Representatives. So that's where that second item in my list comes in. A dramatic event, something that puts the Democrats on their heels and allows Trump and the Republicans to display leadership and vision late in the election, is critical, I think, for Republican performance in the campaign.
Matt Continetti, this will carry over into the break, so I encourage everyone to go and listen to the Big Weekend Pod as well to hear the second part of this, and then Matt will be back on the other side. Would you think that either one or two retirements on the Supreme Court this June or early July would, or even announced earlier, would set the Republicans up for an enthusiasm burst? You can't get a higher than 100% turnout, and the Democrats are there. So what do you think a Supreme Court vacancy or two would do for the GOP?
Well, I do think a vacancy and a fight over the Supreme Court would be something that could mobilize Republican voters in the fall and add to their enthusiasm. And we have historical precedent for this. Again, I'll go back to the 2018 example, Hugh. The Kavanaugh hearings and the way in which now Justice Kavanaugh was treated by the mainstream media and by the Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee infuriated Republicans and to, I think, really defend Trump and go out and support Republican Senate candidates in 2018. I think the Kavanaugh hearings are a reason that Republicans held on to the Senate despite losing the House in 2018. And so a fight over the Constitution, a fight over jurisprudence about what type of direction we want the country to go in, that is something that would galvanize Republican views. And it's a consideration, I think, politically, though I think the justices make their decisions on different considerations.
Oh, they do, and it's, we don't know, and I'm not saying they should go. It's up to two justices and their spouses. I've been peddling the idea that if you really want to make Democrats stand up and go crazy, President Trump would nominate either for a retirement by Justice Thomas or one by Justice Alito, Eileen Cannon, the astute judge from South Florida who ruled correctly that Jack Smith had no constitutional warrant for the position he was in. How do you think Democrats would respond to Judge Cannon's nomination?
Well, they'd go gaga. There's no question about that. I mean, let's not forget, the Democrats will oppose any Supreme Court nominee that President Trump throws up. And that's why people should be wondering about the prospect of a potential retirement among a Republican-appointed justice at the end of this term. Because say that the election does go overwhelmingly in the Democrats' direction and they win not just the House but also the Senate. I happen to think Democratic victory in the Senate is unlikely at the moment, but let's just say it happens. Well, that means that President Trump will get no Supreme Court appointments for the rest of his term.
Zero.
And
no judicial appointments, Matt.
Yeah, no judicial appointments. Probably no cabinet
judge.
Appointments either. Right? Yeah. I mean,
you're right.
It will stop. So that's a that's a consideration. And again, I'm not sure the justices think in those terms. And so, as a Cannon nomination, I think would galvanize Republicans. It would galvanize Democrats. Let's remember, Judge Cannon was also, I think, involved in striking down the Biden vaccine mandate, which was unconstitutional as well, and the mask mandate on planes. So she has, I think, a view of freedom, individual liberty that many conservatives would support if she were nominated to the High Court.
And there are lots of there's Judge Strauss up there in Minnesota Cold Land. There's Amul Thapar in Kentucky. There's David Judge Ho down in Texas. There are a lot of great first-term Trump judges who have added 6 years to their resumes on the appeals court bench. I'm just toying with the Eileen Cannon, but any of them would ignite the Republicans, I think, because Democrats could. I guess this is a question, and I don't want to give you an answer in the form of a question. Could the Democrats resist the bait, Matt, and not trash a nominee?
No. No. Hugh, the Democrats can't resist any bait right now. I mean, look at but they're shutting down the government again this weekend, even though ICE is already funded. So we're having a second government shutdown, partial. It will affect the Department of Homeland Security, which just happens to include, besides ICE, FEMA, the Coast Guard, and the Transportation Security Authority, TSA. And the Democrats are doing it. Why? Because of their left-wing base is demanding resistance to Trump at all costs. And that means grabbing any bait that they see before it.
We'd have Code Pink 24/7 throughout a nomination process, and that's a promise, not a prediction. Time to turn to Iran. I was talking with Eli Lake before you joined us about how long the president has to settle debts. And I think he is indebted to the people of Iran. I think he made promises. The Crown Prince of Iran was on this program Monday and said, President Trump promised help is on the way. So unless they capitulate like Gaddafi did in 2003 and 4, and that would probably mean the generals removing Khamenei and something like that, which I can't imagine, Trump has to hit them very, very hard, or it's a shadow over his entire presidency. Do you agree with that assessment?
Well, I do agree that if Trump fails to enforce the red line that he drew, it will affect the rest of his presidency, not just in the way that we think about his presidential performance, but it will affect the way that America's adversaries see President Trump, see our position in the world. The deterrent is a capability plus the will to use it. And if President Trump ends up not having the will to use our capabilities to enforce the lines he drew, that is, don't kill your own people, stop enriching uranium, and limit your ballistic missiles, and no longer support these terrorist proxies, then it won't just be the mullahs that take notice. It will also be Vladimir Putin. It will also be Xi Jinping in the People's Republic of China, Kim Jong-un in North Korea, they'll all see an opportunity and they'll begin to probe America's defenses. And so I think it's very important that President Trump enforce the red line. And I think what we're seeing now, Hugh, is America moving our assets into position. Kind of, remember, it's capability plus will. So if the will is there, that means we have to have the capability, not just the capability to strike Iran, but also the capability to defend against Iranian retaliation. That takes time. And we were having the second aircraft carrier now moving to the Persian Gulf, to the Arabian Sea. That will take time. And in the meantime, of course, we're replenishing our air defenses and putting other offensive platforms into the region as well. So I think this will play out over the coming weeks. President Trump this week said that, a month or so. That'd probably be
Direct
just
quote.
around the amount of time it takes for that second carrier, which I believe is the Ford carrier group, the largest carrier in the world, to get in place and for everyone there on board and in the affiliate vessels to have operational readiness.
That's what Admiral Montgomery brought me up as a civilian this week. He said it takes the 2 weeks after a carrier arrives on station to get operationally ready to do what they really want to do. If they have the time to take, they want to take the time to get ready. So he said a month or so yesterday on Thursday, and I take that's strategic confusion again. He said everything, but he's also, last question on Iran, I want to go to Japan and China. I think what he's created are the conditions for what Admiral Montgomery called strategic confusion, not ambiguity, but confusion. And we really can't judge what he's done here until it's over. And I'm going to stick to that point. We don't really know if he's erased the red line or not, or he's gone Obama or not, until those ships are withdrawn. Agree?
Oh, agree. Trump always leaves his options open. Trump would prefer a deal, but he's asking things that this Iranian government, this theocratic dictatorship that has waged war against the United States since it came to power in 1979, they're not going to agree to it. And so the moment of decision will come, but it might not come for a few more weeks.
Did you play poker as a young man? Matt, have you ever played Jacks to open, trips to win?
I've played a few hands of poker, but I'm not. Blackjack is more my game, Hugh.
Well, Jacks to open.
Even though the odds are against you in
blackjack.
blackjack, I still prefer it to poker for whatever reason.
Well, so do I, and that's the only thing I know how to play, so that's why I prefer it. I'd lose at blackjack. But Jacks to open. The Iranians don't have Jacks. They don't have anything they can give, or their regime will collapse. And so either the generals, I think it's really the generals do it, or we do it. Now, Matt, earlier today, John Ellis brought me up to speed on this. Japan seized a Chinese fishing boat within their exclusive economic zone. We do not have a carrier in the South China Sea. We do have a big deck. The Tripoli is there. The George Washington is in Yokosuka, their home port in Japan, but they're not patrolling right now. They were patrolling until December. Do you think, what do you think is the worst case scenario for China-Japan right now?
Well, the worst case is always conflict between these two powers that would drag in the United States, obviously, because of our very important alliance with Japan. The Chinese so-called fishing fleets have been harassing our allies for over a decade. What's interesting here is, the Japanese Prime Minister Prime Minister Takaichi just had a tremendous victory in the Japanese parliament, and has now one of the largest majorities ever enjoyed by her party, the LDP, which has been the ruling party of Japan since the Second World War. And of course, Takaichi is disliked intensely by Beijing, because she is a Japanese nationalist, because she is a strong supporter of the democratic government in Taiwan, and because she believes that Japan needs to rearm and expand its defenses. It already has defenses, and we help with them. And so I wonder whether this probing by the Chinese fishing vessel was a part of a test of Takaichi to kind of remind her, even though she has this tremendous political victory, that she still has to watch out for the CCP. I'm not sure I can call her Asia's Thatcher yet, but she is a China hawk.
and I can't imagine that she's going to go wobbly. Do you, Matt? I just don't see it happening.
No, she's not. Thatcher was the Iron Lady. Takaichi is the Iron Maiden because she used to play drums in a metal band. She's a fascinating, yes, she's a fascinating figure. She spent time in the United States, and she was a protege of Shinzo Abe, who is very much in Shinzo Abe's mold. Someone who believes in Japan's power, strength, wants to re-energize the Japanese economy. And of course, Abe had a tremendously important relationship with Trump. And I think Takaichi and Trump are on the way to reestablishing that type of personal friendship that strengthens the alliance in the second term.
Watch that space. The Iron Maiden would be terrific. The Iron Lady and the Iron Maiden. That's a good one. Matt Continetti, thank you as always. Follow Matt at Continetti on X and in the Wall Street Journal and over at AEI. Coming up, Ben Domenech in hour number 2. Don't go anywhere. Except maybe during the break over to our friends for American for Prosperity have put up a new website celebrating our 250th birthday, a250toolkit.com. The number 250, toolkit.com. They believe in the American dream as I do. That's why I came back this week to help with an AFP event celebrating our 250th, and they want to celebrate what makes America special. They want to keep the American dream expanding and growing. They want real stories to tell your story. Go to a250toolkit.com and talk about your stepping up. You're taking one step forward. You don't wait around for the government. You don't wait around for handouts. You go out and you make the American dream happen. It's about individual liberty, pursuing your own happiness. It's not about a big government program. And it's all explained at a250toolkit.com. Remember that web address. Go get smart about our 250th. It's more than nostalgia. It's more than a celebration. A250toolkit.com. The big letter, capital A, toolkit, A250, number 250, A250toolkit.com. Our friends at AFP would love to hear your story. I'm in the Relief Factor studio, and I'm going back to California tomorrow, and I'm going to need this because the dreaded overhead bin, of course, long cross-country flight tomorrow, but mostly because I've done nothing except walk a dog for a couple of days, for a week. Came in on Sunday. I've done maybe a total of 4 miles this week instead of 25. So when I get back on the Implacable Hill next week, assuming it's not raining, and I don't think it's started to rain yet, has it, Generalissimo? It's not. It's going to rain all week. Not till Monday, so I'll get 1 day in. But I've got my Relief Factor right here. I carry in curcumin, resveratrol, omega. I take it every day. I take it with me when I travel. I take it on the Salem News Channel, so those of you who are watching at home, and you ought to go find Salem News Channel and watch along. I hope you're watching Len as you get better. I hope you're watching this afternoon. But a250toolkit.com is over here, and a Relief Factor is over here. And I take it every day so that I can keep up this pace, and then finally when I get back to a place where it's not freezing, get some miles in, get the exercise in. Whether you're just getting older or you're getting your exercise in, you should try Relief Factor because it will make those minor aches and pains go away, at least for most people. Better than aspirin, better than over-the-counter. You can't take those every day. They're not good for you over the counter. They're all natural. I've been taking it. I'm in my 13th year of taking Relief Factor. Knock on wood. Haven't had a serious injury in 13 years. Don't even get the minor aches and pains, even when I do a long one. A long trundle, because Relief Factor does, in fact, work. Give it a try. $19.95 for the starter pack. But you got to go to call 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief. Ask for the starter pack. $19.95. It's less than $1 a day. 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief. Or go to their website. Find the starter pack there as well at relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. Joined by Ben Domenech. He is the host of the Big Ben Pod. And you ought to be listening to the Big Ben Pod. This week you would have heard, is Trump losing America? And a long conversation about a novel with a novelist, which I found very interesting, though I don't read novels very often. Ben Domenech, welcome. I have a completely unexpected turn. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition, but Ben, when you show up, Nobody, but I know that I can ask you about sports, right? Are you an NBA fan?
I am, but I pay more attention to basically once the playoffs start. Especially at this particular moment. I mean, I'll wait for your question, but especially at this time of year when you see so many teams tanking.
Well, this time of year is also when you see teams going all in, and the Cavaliers, my club, has been since they got started in the 70s. They've only won once, 2016. It's been 10 years, and they went all in, trading Darius Garland for the Beard, James Harden. And Cleveland is on fire, Ben. He made his home debut against the Wizards, the hapless Wizards who are tanking, and he's lit up the first 3 games. And I just want to know what you think of the Beard, because Cleveland and I am now in love with the guy, and I've he's been a West guy mostly. He was with Philadelphia and Brooklyn for a while, but mostly it was Thunder and Rockets and stuff like that. Now the Clippers. What do you think of the Beard?
Well, first off, I have to say it's a bold statement to say Cleveland is on fire without giving it some context. But no, you are on fire. And the truth is, I am actually a longtime fan of James Harden. Somebody who I have gotten to see multiple times, in person. And look, the truth is that his limitation has always been a physical one and not a mental one. He's a very smart player, and when he wants to get going, he can get going. And the real question is just whether, he's able to hold up once you get to the playoffs, because I think that this is, this is a moment where there's a lot of action in the East, and there's a lot of things that I think that people frankly are disappointed in how Orlando has turned out. They're disappointed in, a number of different clubs that they thought would be doing better. And I think that, this could be a year where you have a team surprise and break through. And as for the Wizards, yes, they are definitely tanking, though the Anthony Davis and Trae Young acquisitions are ones that make me hopeful if they are able to stay healthy, and that is an incredible heavy if.
Well, that's when Darius Garland got traded, everyone was saying, "Oh, look, he's 10 years younger than Harden." The young man doesn't play; he's hurt all the time because he's small.
He can't. Yeah, no, and he's not. And you can't evaluate a player on hope. I've certainly had plenty of them come through in Washington who you evaluate that way, and you just have to. At a certain point, you have to say, "Are we serious about this or not?" And so I like the Harden move, and I think that there is an opportunity here. Perhaps in the East to really make some noise in a year when certain places have underperformed expectations.
So that's my first step on the diving board to step number 2 about sports. Cleveland is very excited about this. The Guardians have got we have the Browns, and the Browns are a disaster, but they got a new coach. But they're very excited, and it brings me back to the Washington Post decision to close their sports page. Now, if they really want to reinvigorate the paper, they have to reverse that decision, don't they? I pay the Cleveland.com a ridiculous amount. I wrote about this for Fox News this week. I subscribe to them. I get their verticals on the Cavs, the Browns, Ohio State, and the Guardians. Mm-hmm. The only way the Post can actually turn it around is to go heavy into Washington, D.C. sports. They even have the University of Maryland in the Big Ten now. They've got they got hoops. They got UVA playing in for maybe getting in. James Madison looks like it's interesting. What do you think, Ben? Do they change their mind?
I think that there are 2 things that have to happen. One is I actually think they need to expand. You mentioned James Madison. The Washington Post has for years essentially treated anything that's outside of Northern Virginia as if it's a foreign country. They didn't cover Virginia Tech as much as they should have. They don't cover what goes on when UVA was something that was a little bit of an exception because it's a basketball town. But the truth is that when the JMU run was happening, they did almost nothing in terms of their coverage of it because they were more addicted to these stories. And Andrew Stiles over at the Free Beacon did a fantastic roundup of 12 of them that over the past couple of years that are just ridiculous injections of politics into sports. So I think step 1 is you have to expand, you have to cover these different teams that are outside of the Beltway area. But you also, I think, have to be serious about we are in the business of sporting news. We are talking about the games. We are talking about the trades. We are talking about what's going on. We are not using sports as a lens to look into the American psyche as it relates to gender and sex and race.
No, they're doing fan service. They need to do fan service. That's it.
And not the kind of fans who don't care about sports, which is what they've basically been catering to for the last several years. And it's why this decision was easy, because essentially you're killing an opinion section, which is expensive to run, and that's something that I think that they need to understand in order to move forward. And look, I think that would be an enormous benefit to the Post and to having the paper set on a good roll going forward. They need to appreciate how important this is. And I'll say one more thing, and I say this with all due respect to our British friends. There's been, a real importation from the UK, including in the Post, in terms of their leading folks and across media generally. A lot of folks have come over in the last couple of years. One thing that they don't get, American sports, and that's something that I think that they don't quite grok as much as they ought to, as something that was a centerpiece of American discourse, but they have to change the approach that has been used by these lefties who just wanted to inject. I mean, I don't know if you've seen this today, even Sarah Spain, going after J.D. Vance for, seeing him carrying his kid at the Olympics, and she freaked out.
Oh, no, I didn't. I'm not reading the paper. I don't read. I don't subscribe to it anymore.
Well, that's she was doing it on X. But the point is just that, like, those are the kind of people you've had covering sports. That doesn't make sense anymore. You can't get away with that anymore. We're not interested in it. The market has spoken, and you can't, let them write an op-ed occasionally in the New York Times, which also has a lot of people who don't really care about sports reading it, and leave the sports sections alone when it comes to injecting this type of politics into literally every story you can.
I don't want them to go hire David Campbell, who's the Cleveland.com sports editor and a genius, but there've got to be people around who know how to do sports journalism and do it well, because everybody I know in my world loves sports, even if they're lefties.
Lucas Tomlinson, and my colleague, and I text about sports on a daily basis, and when it comes to the Washington decisions and everything related all to the leagues, and he's absolutely as diehard into this as I am. And I'm sure that we would love to have an actual local section that was paying attention to things that mattered in terms of the franchises, as opposed to, again, injecting politics into every piece of coverage that you possibly can. Leave that to the worldwide leader, by the way.
Yeah. My triple jump off of the board now is to the Olympics, and it will take us into the break, and we'll talk about Iran afterwards. I have watched very little Olympics because of one reason. There's too much Olympics. I mean, they're everywhere, broken into 8-minute segments, and there's not NBC News prime time at 7 p.m. You can catch the most important events with all the glitz. Do you think they've killed the Olympics? I don't know what their viewership is like, but it's like a buffet course that is never ending.
Yeah, I think that there's a bit. It's just oversaturation, and it's hard to cover all to pay attention to all the storylines. I'll confess that because of the kid, of the little now almost 6-week-old, I've paid less attention to this Olympics than I normally do, because I like the Olympics. I think it's great to see America go into the Olympics and kick ass. But the thing that I think is really difficult is you never really know what you're watching. It bounces around quite a lot, and I really wish that they would give it to us in a bit more of a package where we would have something more that we can see and follow. I will say, though, that the primary complaint against the Olympics was lodged by the 5-year-old in the house who wanted to watch a movie or something. And my wife informed her that, no, in this house we root for the United States of America. And so that's what happened.
Good for Megan. It's a shared experience. It's a shared experience that most Americans like, but it's not a shared experience anymore when it's fragmented. So the shared experience of watching an ice skater fall or America beat the Russians in 1980, that's not there. So I think they made a huge programming decision.
And if you have not seen it, you should watch this Netflix documentary on the 1980 USA team, I think that they did a poor job of advertising it, because it has a ton of new footage that has never been seen before of the game. And it's really just something that I think is I recommend to everybody that I know to watch, even just as a historical document. And you get different shots of Herb Brooks, you get different shots of key plays that were in it, and you look, that was obviously an incredibly shared experience in America, as you had people able who did not know that it had happened, learning about it. And so I think this is also just one of these. This is one of these eras where we have such an oversaturation of some of these things, often motivated by just being able to do ad sales during them, as NBC has done quite successfully. And that, I think, leads to some of that fragmentation that you're talking about.
I thought your opening of the Big Ben podcast was very provocative this week, where you asked, has President Trump lost the country? And then I watched him go down to Fort Bragg and get the enormous reception that commanders-in-chief get. I think he's lost blue America, but I don't think he's lost red America. It's just a question who turns up in November.
Yeah, I think that the big question, though, Hugh, is whether he is losing, and this is something where he got good news today, obviously, on the inflation figures, whether he has lost that key portion of his coalition, which, as you know, is difficult to get to the polls when it comes to midterms, of working-class Americans. I know that you probably saw, if you haven't, you will, the AOC clip from Munich, where she's talking about. So today, she went to Munich, which is interesting.
That's weird. She's running for president. She's running.
Yeah, it's another sign that, as I think, she's running for president. She's not running for Senate. She's running for president. And that, I think, is. But one of the things that she started leading with was about having a coalition that basically it sounds like half Hillary Clinton on one hand when it comes to the globe, and then half at home Mamdani, and basically affordability. We need to be this working class coalition, all warning about oligarchs, by the way, to Munich, which is pretty funny, and saying that we needed. She was asked by one of the people there about whether we ought to have a wealth tax, and she said that needs to be a priority. That kind of language is actually what upper crust sort of lefties think is an affordability message. It's not an actual affordability message. And if you look consistently, the kind of reports that were coming out after November of last year from the different Democrat super PACs, they all indicated that basically what people want to hear within that demo, which again went for Donald Trump and went in mass and delivered a big victory for him, what they want to hear about is affordability. They feel like things should have gotten cheaper since he got back into office, and they care about those things as a priority. They don't really care about hearing about how insulting it is. She went after the Trump administration, for instance, for getting Maduro, describing it as kidnapping a head of state. Which, I mean, that's quite the stretch.
Wow.
But I think that this is the situation where, again, she's running for president. Put that in your Kalshi bet now. but I think
let me ask you, though, have you ever heard her give a serious interview on national security? I have never heard her once give a serious interview.
Of course not. And she's treated by kid gloves, she in terms of the way that the media acts towards her. And I think we have to expect that will continue. And so, look, you are going to end up with a situation here where the president could lose a significant portion of his coalition, that the Republican Party needs to show up in order to have a competitive November. Otherwise, they get swamped. The Democrats take at least the House, and they just turn the next 2 years into a complete crap show of investigations and impeachments.
Well, that's going to happen. I think we're going to lose the House. I'm temporarily stunned because during the break, Ben Domenech told me that AOC went to the Munich Security Conference, which is, with the Reagan Defense Conference and the Halifax Conference, the big three national security conferences around the country. The Nixon Foundation does one as well in D.C., but the one up in Halifax, out west, and in Munich, they're the big three. And I can't imagine AOC at a security conference, Ben. Just explain to our Steelers fans what that means, because I agree with you what it means.
What it means is that AOC wants the attention of the world, and the way that she framed herself, by the way, to this global audience was essentially as someone who didn't want to tear down the system, but kind of restore an older system of using all the normal catchphrases of global order and the like. She basically depicted the Trump administration as agents of chaos. When it came to global affairs, particularly in our own hemisphere, citing the Greenland example, citing the Venezuela example, citing some of this other saber rattling and the like. What she really means, of course, when she says something like that, is she wants a China-run global order, in my opinion. But that's just my opinion. The thing is, I think that when she goes onto a stage like that, she knows she's going to be treated with kid gloves by the international folks. They're not going to be judging her right off the bat, and she can basically give this message as one where again, she's, depending on which polling numbers you look at, she's third currently in terms of the ranking of the Democratic potential presidential candidates. You can debate about where she is, but she's definitely third, with Newsom and of course Kamala Harris hanging around as 1 and 2, depending on the poll that you're looking at. I think she fully intends to run for president. I think she wants to depict herself as being this futurist female candidate, but from a younger generation. And I think that she wants to basically become someone who could go up against a Vance. I mean, Rubio was there as well this year, of course. Go up against, potentially a Rubio and depict them as being chaotic figures where she's a return to normalcy on the international level. And that's a savvy political move, I think. It's the kind of thing
there's no downside to her running for president. There's none. She didn't get stuck in the Senate where she's 100th out of 100.
Yep.
She gets it, the brass ring, or she makes $1 gazillion and she becomes her own thing. So there's no downside to it. It's almost inevitable that she runs, and I think she's going to win because she got chops on stage. And the president has said to me on this show, she's got a lot of sparkle, but we'll have to see how she does it in interviews. She does not do interviews, Ben, and I don't know whether or not she can do the Kamala thing for a whole campaign. I don't think they're going to
require her to do it. I think she's going to skate. And this is the thing that's happened so frequently with her. Again, she represents herself as being this candidate who appeals to the working class. And you can't think of a less working class friendly policy than something like the Green New Deal. I mean, it's a complete opposite. And yet she never gets asked about that. The idea that she is going to skate into this role is something that I certainly believe, and I would be scared if I was Gavin Newsom, that she could have the kind of inspiring appeal that he is this kind of slick California, Silicon Valley backed, Reid Hoffman backed candidate or something like that, is going to seem like she's going to make him seem like the corporatist, billionaire friend.
Much older.
Yes,
much older.
And I think that that's something that has real resonance in an America where, no offense to you, the millennials are in charge right now. We are. We're going to skip right past these extras.
You cannot offend me because I'm 70. I know what happens, and I'm looking at Gavin, and Gavin's on my side of the divide. He's not on your side of the divide.
Well, but again, I maintain the most Gen X thing to ever happen is to not have a president. It's like we looked around and we decided, no, we'll not do that. And so it's the thing that I think is going to be very interesting going forward. Look at the way that she is covered versus the way that J.D. Vance is covered, because they are essentially, I think that they are headed on a collision course. And I think
now I've been talking about, I got to get this in, because I've been talking about Iran with Matt Continetti and Eli Lake. I don't have to cover it with you, but I do want to cover with you Takaichi, the new prime minister who just won overwhelmingly a week ago. Huge majority in the Diet in Japan. And today, her security forces went out and nabbed a Chinese fishing vessel inside their exclusive economic zone. It's a Continetti says we should call her the Iron Maiden. I said maybe she'll be Asia's Thatcher, and Continetti said no, she's the Iron Maiden, not the Iron Lady, because I didn't know she was in a heavy metal band. What do you think of her, and what do you think of this crisis in the South China Sea?
I think that this is going to be a real test for us in terms of the alliances that we have in the region, and it could be something that could spawn. I mean, it's very rare that something like this happens without after effect dominoes falling. I'll be curious to see how she handles it. I do think that she's someone to watch, but in an era when we have seen so much praise directed at North Korea of all places for having a female heir named. That was the big trend among lefty Twitter. Why can't we have a female heir named, here in the United States? Why don't people look to, women politicians who are actually good at what they're doing? Why don't?
And she's serious. We just talked about AOC not doing any national security interviews ever. That's what she made her bones on. She's a China hawk.
Yes, yeah, and I think that this is obviously a test case, but the truth is that we should be applauding this in the West in terms of having someone in that job who understands the real threat that China represents and is not too scared to confront it. But look, these are the kind of questions I would like to see AOC asking, as opposed to should we have a wealth tax?
If we asked AOC, if we asked her what the Hunan Island incident was, would she have a clue? Do you think she'd have a clue?
I don't. I'm not a big fan of basic tests in order to run for office or to get that job, but I kind of wish that we made all of the folks who did this do some form of political jeopardy, just for the sake of where do you what part of the world do you think Afghanistan is in? How about that?
Yeah, well,
let's just start with that.
I don't believe in gotchas, but I do believe that before you become president. And, famously, Donald Trump told me he'd know more about terrorists on day one when he became president than I did. And sure enough, he's taken out more terrorists than any other president on a one-on-one basis. He does it. But I just wonder, she doesn't really have any kind of evidence, any kind of grasp of the complexity of what she aspires to speak on. There's some humility you need.
It's a real problem. I think it's a real problem. But I think that the other problem that we need to understand is she has a political career that is built on vibes and social media. That works in this era. It's going to raise a ton of money for her. She's going to have a ton of energy. And I think that Republicans should not underestimate her. And that's something that we've seen happen before, where they've thought that certain people could come. I mean, I remember the talk about Barack Obama. How are they going to elect?
Oh yeah, I'm guilty.
And but see, I think at the time you can defend yourself because that seemed like a very unlikely scenario. But sometimes the nation is a couple of rungs ahead, I guess, or a couple of rungs behind where you think they are, and they are very vulnerable in an era. Like, think about it this way: in an era in which education scores have plummeted. Not everybody's Mississippi, Hugh, and I say that as a proud child of Mississippi.
I agree. I was in the Fleet Center when Obama gave his speech in 2004, and I was impressed, but I wasn't thinking he could be president. So that just tells you what 4 years can do. But he also is a Harvard Law guy, and she is not. Well, Ben Domenech has given us a lot to think about. Follow Ben at BDomenech on X. Listen to the Big Ben podcast. Joined by Jonathan Williams. He is the CEO of the American Legislative Exchange Council, alec.org/Hugh, if you want to get a weekly update on that. Jonathan, you're going to Indiana. I want to warn you, my friends in Indiana have been sending me all sorts of Indiana Hoosier propaganda since they won the national championship, and you might run into Margaret Fett from the University of Sewing.com. She's the one who does it. Are you ready to be regaled with Hoosier mania when you get there?
Hey, well, Hugh, you might have a new boogeyman. It might not be the Wolverines now. You got to watch out for the Hoosiers.
Well, we both do. Even you people from the team up north, we all have to worry about Kurt Signetti. But I want you to have good time there. You're going to hustle up with Mike Braun, the governor. What are you there to do?
Well, as you know, Governor Braun was a phenomenal U.S. Senator before he was Governor Braun, somebody that raised a lot of awareness around our national debt challenges that we have as a country. And that's what we're going to be doing is talking about the new ALEC resolution that's based on Indiana Senate resolution, talking about really the national debt in terms of a national security challenge. We've seen, quotes from military leaders and others over the years to say one of our biggest challenges facing us when it comes to the pacing challenge of the CCP and just the overall military readiness is the national debt. As you know, Hugh, now we pay more on the interest every year of the national debt than we do the entire Department of War budget and defense apparatus. So this is something that needs urgent attention. And thankfully, under Director Vogt at the OMB and the Trump administration, they took what they inherited under Joe Biden, which was over $30 trillion of combined deficit projected over the next 10 years, and now have reduced that by a really incredible $13 trillion just in the first year of this administration, according to the new OMB numbers.
Now, Jonathan, we're at $38.7 trillion in debt. That's 100% of GDP. Have we ever been there before, even in World War II?
I mean, we're at World War II levels, essentially. I mean, right now, per taxpayer, Hugh, it's $355,000 for every taxpayer across the country. I mean, this is something that needs urgent attention. Thankfully, what we see at the state level every day is the men and women of ALEC are out there balancing budgets. 49 of the 50 states have a balanced budget requirement. We have great things in law like Colorado's Taxpayer Bill of Rights that we talk about that limit the growth of spending. But we've got to do something like that here in Washington, D.C. to change these incentives, which are all wrong, as you know, that go way back to the Congressional Budget Control Act in the 1970s. But that needs to get addressed. And thankfully, what we're seeing right now under the OMB and Director Vogt, we're moving the ball in the right direction. And you add that to this economic growth that we're seeing with the GDP numbers, that's something that's just absolutely incredible.
And inflation dropping. It's a good economic macro, but we still have this debt cliff, this debt overhang. I'll come back to that if we have time. I want to, though, talk with at least one person this week about the repeal of the endangerment finding, which came in 2007. The United States Supreme Court said, sorry, 5-4, nothing we can do about it. It's been repealed. This is enormous news, but I don't think the country has been able to focus on it because President Trump and EPA Administrator Zeldin did it in a week of enormous news, and it's just hard to explain to people, Jonathan, why it's so important.
Well, it is. And I think this is, according to Administrator Zeldin, who has just been pitch perfect talking about this in the last day. This is the largest deregulatory effort in the history of the United States. It's $1.3 trillion, and that's probably a conservative estimate of what it's going to save us. I mean, that breaks down to, what, $4,000 per every man, woman, and child in the United States in terms of savings. So talking about something directly getting to this issue of affordability that people left, right, and center are talking about, this is an incredible piece to get there. But the other thing about it, Hugh, that we find, I think, just really refreshing is this return to a discussion around who should decide the major questions of regulatory powers, and it relates to the economy. This is something in a long line of, the decisions on this, West Virginia versus EPA, Loper Bright, and others, to say, when we are talking about what's going to mean for climate regulations across the United States, viewers may disagree on that. I'm sure they do. But who should be deciding it is the more important question. It should not be unelected bureaucrats at the EPA. It should be the duly elected members of the U.S. Congress and the President of the United States deciding those questions. And so to us, it's a return to a proper constitutional balance of powers. That's something we're pushing at the state level and educating our legislators every single day on things they can do at the same spot that we're seeing with Reins level legislation at the state level and others. So we're so excited about this, and it's something, to your point, Hugh, it's a huge issue. Not enough people are paying attention to it, but it's going to add to this incredible economic momentum that we're seeing right now.
I'm trying to get Administrator Zeldin on next week because it is an enormous deal. Not surprisingly, the American Legislative Exchange Council ahead of everyone in calling attention to it. Safe travels to Indiana among all those Hoosiers, Jonathan. If you want to know what's going on in the states, go to alec.org/U, alec.org/U. Or go to richstatespoorstates.com and read up on Indiana. I do want to remind you, Consumer Cellular is our great sponsor. This is the weekend to make the change. You can have savings with service. All you have to do is remember their number, 1-800-411-4454, 1-800-411-4454, 1-800-411-4454. My code is Hugh, H-U-G-H. That will get you your second month for free. Or you can visit consumercellular.com/Hugh. Remember, the code is H-U-G-H. That gets you your second month of service for free. What should you be shopping for? A plan that saves you money. Forget the phones that aren't free. They're being offered to you by Big Cellular. The service is the same at Consumer Cellular. They just drive down the prices. For example, if you're 50 and older, you can get 2 lines of unlimited data, for $60 a month. Keep your numbers, keep all your contacts, all that stuff takes about 20 minutes to switch. But you got to make the call or visit the website first, 1-800-411-4454. My code is Hugh. Or go to consumercellular.com/Hugh. Now let's go over and listen to what I had to say to John Roberts on America Reports a couple hours ago.
Bring in Hugh Hewitt, Fox News contributor and host of the Hugh Hewitt Show. He writes in his latest piece on FoxNews.com that President Trump's next move in Iran could be, quote, the most important decision of his presidency. Hugh, thanks for being with us. Thank you for hanging with us through the president's speech as well. You'd originally been scheduled in our last hour. I want to expand just a little bit on your op-ed because you say this: Trump could be remembered as the man who brought help to the Iranian people after nearly 50 years of fanatical dictatorship and secured America from an unfolding threat, or as the president who backed down more spectacularly than any president before him. You say that he's got a big choice here. The president has remarked that it's time for new leadership in Iran, but I think there's a real concern about what might fill the power vacuum if the regime were to fall.
Well, there is, John. Good afternoon. I don't think it can get worse than a regime that murders 35 to 40,000 of its people in the streets last month. President Trump's laid down a lot of red lines around Iran. Yesterday, he said extreme trauma if they don't strike a deal. Now it's possible even for tyrants to capitulate. Gaddafi did that to George W. Bush in late 2003, 2004. You'll remember after we successfully invaded Iraq, got up to Baghdad, Gaddafi called up and said, come get my Scuds, come get my nukes, come get my chemical weapons of mass destruction. And we did. He totally disarmed. He stayed in power for a few more years, but he totally disarmed. So it's possible that the Iranians would capitulate. But yesterday, the president, on the follow-up question, after he said they'll suffer extreme trauma if they don't strike a deal, he was asked, when? He said, oh, a month or so. So I think we've got a time frame now, and the Ford is on its way. It'll take about 1-2 weeks for the Ford to get there, or a few days to get comfortable on station. And that's more firepower than I've seen assembled since 2003 for the invasion of Iraq. And I think the president, what he just said down there at Fort Bragg, was just another message to Iran. Our military can go anywhere and get anything done that it wants to. I think he's going to drop the dime on the Iranians unless they totally capitulate to the missiles, abject support of terrorist groups around the world, stop killing your people, and, of course, anything left of the nuclear program that was obliterated. They might even be facing the discombobulator, John.
Yeah. Well, judging by reports that I've heard out of Venezuela from people who are subject to the discombobulator, that's not something that you want to be subject to. I want to switch gears here with you, Hugh, to the Epstein files, because there's a very high-profile casualty of those files. Axios writing, quote, Goldman Sachs top lawyer Catherine Rumler resigned Thursday night after her name appeared in Epstein files documents. A resignation announcement that's effective June 30th follows the release of files showing emails spanning several years from a Kathy Rumler, who referred to the disgraced late financier as, quote, Uncle Jeffrey. She was not only Goldman Sachs chief counsel, but she was deputy White House counsel in the Obama administration. And we think about the Epstein files and casualties. You would presume that it would be men who would be most vulnerable, not a woman.
Well, the blast radius from the Epstein files just keeps getting bigger and bigger. Ms. Rumler is very accomplished. Not only was she White House counsel for President Obama, she was a partner at Latham and Watkins. After that, she'd been at Justice and AUSA. Very, very good lawyer. After she left the White House, though, she set up a white-collar criminal defense practice with Latham and Watkins, and Jeffrey Epstein sent her clients, and they developed a working relationship. It was professional, and she got gifts and clients from Epstein. She gave Epstein good spin advice, but it went all very bad when she got too chummy in these emails, when the emails were released. And I thought it was a bad idea at the time. Democrats pushed for it. I don't know who's going to end up with the most casualties because the emails are taking down people left, right, and center. You don't get close to a convicted sex felon. You don't help him with his spin, even if he sends you good clients. So Ms. Rumler is a very fine lawyer who had a very bad set of instincts regarding Mr. Epstein and whether or not she ought to be giving him advice. She wasn't his lawyer, but she gave him advice on how to spin his legal troubles in 2018, 2019, something like that. And finally, she said, for the better interest of Goldman Sachs, she did the right thing. She walked the plank. Always put your client in front of yourself. If you practice law, you know that. But I don't think she's going to be the last to go overboard because those emails are horrible.
Right. You know, Michael LaRosa, who's familiar to many people in this program, put out on Accent, another Democrat bites the dust. How many more Ds will be embarrassed, dragged through the mud, or declared guilty by association for pushing for these Epstein files to be released? Hugh, great to have you with us. As always, I hope you have a good weekend. We'll see you soon.
I want to point out, I think Ms. Rumler did the right thing today, but I'm just glad I did not run in those circles because you didn't have to make a choice and you didn't have to know, and I assume she know, and certainly she did know by late 2018, 2019 that he was a convicted sex felon. He was under investigation. She gave him spin, not legal advice. It was just, she never expected her emails to come out, but the blast radius keeps getting bigger and bigger. That's why we don't do what the Democrats insisted we do, Tom Massey insists we do, which is release troves of emails. It was just a terrifically bad judgment. I'm in the Relief Factor studio. I took my Relief Factor in hour number 1. I want to remind you in this hour number 2 that I take it every single day, and you ought to give it a try. 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief. 1-800-4-RELIEF. You got the weekend coming up, and I want you to know, enjoy it. Go all out. I'm flying back to California, getting away from the Beltway cold tomorrow, and that's fine. And I'm looking forward to getting back to California, get my miles in. But I'll pay the price next week because I've done nothing this week because it's been too cold. So the first couple of days out, I probably normally would feel aches and pains, but I'm not going to because of Relief Factor. Give it a try. 3-week starter pack, $19.95. That's less than $1 a week when you call 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief. Or go find the Relief Factor starter pack at their website, relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. The poet laureate of the Hugh Hewitt Show with a working website, Tarzana Joe, as in tarzanajoe.com. Hello, Joe.
Oh, Hugh, you know, there's no more poetic day then tomorrow, which means there's something very important about today. Calendars are useful to mark the times and seasons, to plan for festive holy days, and many other reasons. But there are dates we contemplate which pop up during the year, only known and notable for generating fear. The first and foremost mornings, recognized by all of you, is the 14th day of April, as the tax is coming due. Christmas Eve is next in line, I'd say without a doubt. For those behind in shopping know their time is running out. The next feast is more movable. Unlike Arbor Day or Earth Day, it's the day before the dawning of your spouse or mother's birthday. And then there is today, my friends, especially for men, the vigil of St. Valentine snuck up on us again. The blooms are stale or wilted, candy's late or lost, jewelry is apropos, but oh, it's such a cost. A dinner date might save you and generate ovations, but that special place she likes to go, fresh out of reservations. There's only one thing left to do. It works, because I've seen it. Tell her you're in love with her, and say it like you mean it. That's Is Anybody Buying That? By Tarzana Joe.
Well, I'm going to print that off when I get home tomorrow night late, Joe, and say I commissioned this from Tarzana Joe, and I think most of the people in our audience can probably get away with that too, because today is Friday the 13th, very unlucky day for Valentine's Day people. It will be posted at tarzanajoe.com, I hope.
Indeed, and it's downloadable from there. And you know, this is the birth date of my writing poetry. I don't know if you remember, some 20 years ago.
No.
I said to the you listeners, I think it was actually on the 11th of February, if you need a poem, email me. And I got 45 emails in the next 10 minutes. So I said, there may be a career in this. And
how many poems have you written for hire in the 20 years since transpired?
About an average of 125 a year.
Holy smokes! So we're coming up on 2,500 poems.
Something like that.
You know, Joe, I think we need volume 3 of the Tarzana Joe poem collection. And they're both, by the way, the earlier books are available at tarzanajoe.com, as is the I Need a Poem or I Want a Poem button, back up and working at tarzanajoe.com. Rates are reasonable. Inflation was down, Joe, so you can only increase your price year over year or month over month by 0.4% or something like that.
That's good news. Good news for the economy, not for poets.
Have a wonderful Valentine's Day, Joe, and to Tarzana Johanna as well, and to everyone out there listening.